If risk analysis is a change in the way we think, we need to understand why a change might be desirable. Much of the information in this little lecture is taken from Morgan Jones' excellent book, The Thinker's Toolkit: 14 Powerful Techniques for Problem Solving. It was published by Three Rivers Press in 1998. People are not terribly analytical, and our human reasoning is fallible. We see that in people all around us. We're especially good at seeing it in people all around us. We're not quite so good at seeing it in ourselves. But we're all subject to this fallible reasoning. Therefore, when we do risk analysis, we're trying to influence our thinking and make it more analytical. To the extent that succeeds, we can limit the damage that fallible thinking does. So in this video, we're going to identify a couple aspects of our thinking that makes it quite fallible. We begin with the emotional dimensions of our thoughts and our decisions. Emotion is the trait that has the greatest influence on what and how we think. If you're married, if you have kids, if you are a kid, you know this is true. Emotion really can hijack our ability to reason, and in turn, it can make reasonable people into screaming maniacs. That is when serious mistakes result. The same thing can happen in our professional lives. We might not get under each other's skin as much as our family does, or maybe even more so in some cases. But you have to check your state of emotions when making important decisions for your organizations. Risk analysis is not emotional. That's one of the reasons we're trying to shift the decision-making paradigm to include more risk analysis. Here's a fact we all know, but may not realize. Our minds love shortcuts. Our minds can retrieve a ready-made subroutine or process and execute it immediately. Perceptions trigger hidden reactions, and these hidden reactions can take a silent toll on our decision-making. Shortcuts are what make experts. Experts have the shortcuts, and they know how to get to answers when other people don't. The problem is, these shortcuts are unconscious, and we're not aware of them, and worse, we have no conscious control over them. Therefore, when you make decisions for yourself, no one much cares about the shortcuts that you use to do that. If we're stewards of a public trust, like public health or safety, water quality, the environment, and the like, then that's a little bit different. These shortcuts usually work well, and as I've mentioned, they can make us experts, but they don't always work well. And that's where the problem comes in. We don't get to teach the mind how to work. If I said I would like you all to think of 3 ways to improve education around the world, we would all start to think, but what happens is we usually get silent, and we wait for one of these shortcuts that we've learned over our lifetime to pop up. We want one of these subroutines to begin, and we want it to hand us an idea to lead us out of this thinking exercise. It's really hard to think critically. So risk analysis improves decision-making by using science rather than shortcuts. This limits the damage those shortcuts can inadvertently do. One common shortcut is the drive to see patterns. How many times have you been walking down the street and caught the side profile of someone's face, absolutely sure you know who it is, only to turn around and find out it's a complete stranger? Or maybe you're reading a book and you catch 3 or 4 letters together and your mind fills in the word and does it wrongly. We instinctively see the world in terms of these patterns, and it's not a conscious process. We have this inner compulsion, this DNA compulsion to see patterns. It can mislead us when we're dealing with problems that need to be analyzed. We can look at random events and see them as non-random. We see patterns when they do not exist. We also might miss a pattern that is clearly there. Take the example of the moon. Some cultures see a rabbit in the moon, others see the man, some see handprints, some see a tree, and there are others who even see a woman. We are really good at cherry-picking the facts that reinforce the pattern we want to see. If we want a pattern, we're going to see it. We can fill in the missing information. We filter out the stuff that conflicts with the pattern we're looking for. Stereotyping is a form of patterning. We do a lot of stereotyping when problems come up. This is this kind of problem, and that's how we handle it. We see similarities that are based on some very superficial features, and that's really helpful because it's instantaneous, it's unconscious, and it allows us to get through the day. But stereotypes aren't always correct, and superficial features are not always enough. Risk analysis is different because it requires evidence to support the patterns we see. Humans rely on bias and assumptions. Bias is that unconscious belief that happens to condition, govern, and compel our behavior. A lot that we do is driven by bias, and the problem with this, like some other shortcuts, is they are instinctive and beyond our control. The mind just does it for us. Generally, they're a good thing, but we're stuck with them whether we like them or not, and whether or not the result of the bias is a good thing. This bias is a recurring theme. Take a look at the link at the bottom left of the page. There you'll see a comprehensive list of some of the cognitive biases that are generally well recognized. We give high value to information that reinforces our beliefs, while we discount information that does not. That's the cherry-picking ability that we have as human beings. Risk analysis does not want to pick cherries. Risk analysis wants to harvest and then separate the wheat from the chaff. These hidden biases are the prime movers in our analytic process. That's how we select our tools, that's how we select our data, that's how we draw our conclusions. Bias can constrain and bound what we think in any given situation. Bias is basically plausible reasoning, and plausible reasoning can be a really good thing, but it's not always a really good thing. If we go back a few million years when we first began to walk upright, along the savannas when someone heard a noise in the high grass, that analytical, critical thinking person that decided to go investigate what was making the noise, their DNA did not make it into our gene pool. What happened was the plausible reasoner, the person who heard the noise and said, "I'm getting out of here," and ran away, that's who contributed to our DNA. Logical reasoning did not do that. Good risk analysis is trying to avoid the plausible reasoning that bias causes and to rely more on logical reasoning. Our mindset is the mother of all biases. Your organization has a mindset, and you have one too. Yours might conflict with your organization's mindset, and that can make for some difficult work days. On the other hand, over time, many of us adopt our organization's mindset. It is as we go through life acquiring information and experience that we develop our own mindset. So it can be described as the summation of all of our biases. And this mindset exerts a really powerful influence on the way we think, the way we act. It's also usually a good thing, but not always. Mindset usually serves us really well. I have the economist mindset, so I can interpret events quickly. I know how economists think about problems and how we solve those problems. I'm looking for marginal values. I'm thinking about opportunity cost, looking at all kinds of value concepts and all those things because that's my mindset. As a microbiologist, You might have your own mindset, as do chemists, business people, engineers, and others. We spend years refining and honing these mindsets, and they're much more powerful than the simple biases that we've talked about. They're much harder to overcome. So the last bullet here is a point I would like to stress. Be aware that you have one, even if you don't know exactly what it is, or all the ways that it works. In addition, regard them with awe and wariness, because they can hijack you and distort reality. Once a mindset takes root, it's hard to displace it because it's beyond the reach of our conscious mind. Biases and mindset take information and time to change. Risk analysis has its own mindset, but we're thinking that if we have a science-based mindset and a mindset that says to pay attention to the things that you do not know, we might be able to make better decisions with a risk analysis mindset. Human beings have a need for explanations. We do not just like them, they are absolutely necessary in such an uncertain world. We have this compulsion to explain things, and that's how we discovered so much knowledge in our time on the planet. The problem is, sometimes we may be seeking cause and effect where it doesn't exist. Our explanations need not be true to satisfy our need to know and to be able to explain things. When an event has no particular meaning, we can find one anyway. We can come up with explanations that do not fit the evidence very well. Subconsciously, we don't care if our explanation is valid or not, as long as it enables us to move on. Our indifference to the validity of our explanations is stunningly profound. Risk analysis seeks sound evidence-based explanations for what we see and sound evidence-based reasons for what we do about what we see. Human beings prefer what confirm our views. That's why we choose friends who are so much like us. We don't want to be spending all of our time arguing. So we put stock in the evidence that supports our beliefs, and we devalue that which does not. In the United States, for example, this is why Democrats can look at former President Clinton and see a saint, and they can look at former President Bush and see a demon. Whereas Republicans look at President Clinton and see the demon, while looking at President Bush to see the saint. I like this example, but it's culturally biased. But you shouldn't be surprised to learn that I'm biased, certainly not in this video. Your job is to figure out who this is. As soon as you think you know, raise your hand. The new chief executive, one of the youngest in his nation's history, is being sworn into office on a bleak, cold, cloudy day in January. Standing beside him is his predecessor, a military leader who has led the nation through a world war. The new chief executive was raised as a Catholic and rose to his new position in part because of his vibrant charisma. He is revered by the people and will play a crucial role in a military crisis that will face his nation. His name will become legendary. In the United States, many to most people would have immediately recognized this person to be John Fitzgerald Kennedy, former President of the United States. But in fact, this is a description of Adolf Hitler. we like our explanations better than the facts. When it comes to explanations, we tend to accept at face value information consistent with our beliefs, and to critically scrutinize and discount information that contradicts our beliefs. We tend to see in a body of evidence what we expect to see, and we do not see what we do not expect or do not want to see. The mind reconfigures evidence to make it consistent with our expectations. So be careful not to fall in love with your first idea. Keep an open mind. We can too quickly focus on a problem or a solution to a problem, not interested in considering alternatives to it. Risk analysis honors values and the explanations they can lead us to, but it also seeks a scientific explanation. If you've been keeping track, the eighth thing that humans do that leads to fallible thinking is we cling to untrue beliefs. We treat them like our possessions, and that's because they make us feel good. We cherish and protect our beliefs, whatever they might be. Nevertheless, many of our most cherished beliefs are untrue. Usually we prefer to believe what we prefer to be true. Now let's take that idea out of the world of religion and politics to avoid any real conflict, and let's just consider it in the realm of your friends. Look at your friends, look at your own life, and the things that you believe about the people around you, when others might have entirely different views of that person. The examples of this are endless, especially when we talk about the people that we know. This willingness to embrace untrue beliefs can have disastrous effects on our ability to analyze. One of the ways I often see this is that industry and government have a lot of beliefs about each other and what motivates one or the other. And these beliefs often seem to get in the way of genuine progress. Risk analysis tries to seek truth, a truth that is separate from beliefs. Risk analysis is a decision support paradigm that is designed in part to try to correct for our fallible ways of thinking. Here are a couple of takeaway points. Risk analysis separates what we know from what we do not know. It identifies key uncertainties and it addresses them in the analysis. It identifies assumptions and it challenges them. Risk analysis forces us to consider different perspectives, both scientific and values-based. Risk analysis challenges the way we think in an effort to improve the decisions we make.